Tales of the Incandescent, Episode 5, Blackpoints Six. The night sky over Italy was a breathtaking sight. The beautiful city and its surrounding waters were illuminated, creating a stunning contrast against the darkness. A big, bright full moon hung overhead, adding to the magical ambiance. "I love authentic Italian food," Y's voice drifted through the air. "How did you like the last episode?" The scene shifted to a restaurant where X and Y were enjoying a fancy Italian dinner. The table before them was a feast for the eyes. Lasagna, garlic bread, multiple bowls of spaghetti, and dishes of garlic knots were spread out in abundance. Candlelight flickered, casting a warm glow on their wine glasses. X responded thoughtfully. It was interesting. A far departure from the holiday-themed cryptids thing for sure. "Feel like getting on to the next one?" I inquired. "Sure, why not?" X replied with a shrug. I couldn't resist a pun. "Well, that's my name." X rolled her eyes at Y's dumb joke, but before she could retort, Y made his move. He plunged his hand into a bowl of spaghetti from which a wire was visibly protruding. "Disgusting," X exclaimed, her face contorting in revulsion. Y held up the sauce-covered plug triumphantly. From a new angle, it became apparent that the light bulb had been beside them the entire time. As Y raised the plug, the bulb began to light up, causing the sauce and herbs clinging to the metal prongs to glisten and sparkle. X cringed. "Ooh. Better than blood, right?" Y quipped. "I suppose," X conceded reluctantly. As was customary in their strange adventures, a bright light began to fade the scene out, signaling the end of this particular illumination. A family, Tales of the Incandescent Illumination Number 6. As the bright light fades, we find ourselves in an abandoned village at night. A green-tinted mist spreads through the decaying wooden houses, their panels falling off, roofs punctured with holes, and doors missing. Through this eerie scene, we hear the voice of Claire, a sweet and innocent 16-year-old girl. "My name is Claire," she begins, her voice tinged with fear. "Do you know that feeling? When it's a moment or two after you just watch something change forever?" As Claire speaks, a soldier in a medieval helmet enters the scene, searching intently. He's on horseback, and soon more men emerge from the thick, hazy mist. A small army appears, their shields adorned with crosses, wielding an array of weapons from swords and spears to bows. Claire continues her monologue. "It's a sort of catching-up moment. Like, the foot of your mind is still where it was, but it knows it's about to leave, so you feel like you don't want to let the moment go. But your other foot is real, and so, you have to let the other one go." The army spreads out through the village, searching thoroughly. We can hear the soldiers shouting about monsters chasing people out of this poor, God-forsaken place. Claire's voice echoes over the scene. "That's the moment that I was in not too long ago. Nothing can stop that moment, once it begins." As the soldiers continue their search, their faces betray a mix of wariness and determination. They expect a monster to jump out at any moment, yet their quest drives them forward with stern resolve. "No one makes the rules, or any rules exactly," Claire muses. "There is a set of rules, I think, but those are nature's laws, and she is a very complicated woman, mother and father say. But still, who doesn't get upset when bad things happen? Terrible things. You'd have to have no heart." Suddenly, the soldiers nod to one another, and in a swift, coordinated action, they set fire to the village. Every rooftop is set ablaze with torches, which are left scattered inside and outside the abandoned homes. "We can only pray." Claire's voice trails off as the army gallops away, leaving the village to burn. "That things go our way. We can pray, though," Mama says. The scene shifts to a dark cave, pitch black and impossible to see. We're with the family as they share scraps of rat flesh, the sound of their chewing and flesh ripping filling the air. "I wish we had more than just this rat to eat. I miss your cooking, Mom," says Boyce, his voice on the verge of tears. "We ought to be grateful, Boyce," his mother replies softly. "I'm grateful very, Mama," Claire chimes in. Their father's gruff voice cuts through the darkness. "Bah, huck slop, God's abandoned us and you know it." Silence falls, broken only by the sound of chewing. The mother speaks again, her voice filled with hope. I still believe that someone from somewhere will come and save us from this fate. I don't, and you know why, the father retorts. More silence follows, then the mother pleads, I'm just thankful for the rat. Just let me be thankful for the rat, please. I'm thankful for it too, Boyce adds hesitantly. We hear the father sigh, his voice thick with unshed tears. Me too. The sound of sobbing fills the cave as the family cries together. Claire's voice cuts through the darkness once more. If we never hid in this cave, we wouldn't have found the rat. So we can be thankful for that too, you know? The family agrees, finding a small measure of comfort in their gratitude. Everything is a blessing, the mother says softly. Nothing can take that away from us. From anyone, Claire adds. As the family huddles closer together, their movements creating brief shadows on the cave walls, Claire's inner monologue continues. We were grateful. For each other and for everything. Not just the rat. But we knew no one would come for us to save us. We knew why we were here, what happened. We knew. But still, like they say, it's the small things. After all, we are all each small things ourselves, compared to the whole. Slowly, the darkness in the cave begins to grow hazy with thickening smoke. Claire's voice fades as her father starts choking, followed quickly by Boyce. We're grateful, she finishes as she and her mother begin to choke as well. Claire gasps as the family's choking intensifies, the cave now full of thick smoke. The family gags and chokes violently. We need to go, now, the father manages to shout between coughs. Outside the cave, thick smoke billows from the entrance. The army waits on a nearby hill, 2 soldiers discussing the situation. Captain, I think we overdid it a little, one soldier says nervously. How are we going to be able to see them when they come out of the cave? Hopefully that won't matter, the other replies grimly. Hopefully, they die in there. Suddenly, 4 thick billows of smoke gust out of the cave, accompanied by the silhouettes of the family as they run out, choking and gasping. They flee in the opposite direction of the army's position. Hey, there they go, a soldier shouts, pointing at the barely visible figures in the distance. The family runs through a misty forest, its thick vegetation making their escape difficult. Claire's voice floats over the scene once more. How long does the running, the chasing, the hide-and-seek go on for? Perhaps this is all a part of the grand design, to run, to hide, to chase, to seek. As they stumble through the hilly, root-filled forest, Claire continues her philosophical musings, comparing God to a child playing with a monster card collection, setting up rules and keeping scores. The family finds refuge under a hill, sheltered by a canopy of thick, branching roots. They huddle together, still breathing heavily and choking slightly. Meanwhile, the army charges through the forest, their horses easily traversing the difficult terrain as the soldiers shout and wave their swords and torches. Claire's voice rises again. It's just a system of pattern. That's the one, understandable, certainly agreeable fact. My family's forefathers were fallen angels, the fathers of the Nephilim, the abominable giants who birthed our wretched race. Suddenly, the army surrounds the family's hiding place. Over there, a soldier shouts. Reveal yourselves, trolls, the captain demands, his face contorted with disgust. And then, for the first time, we see the family clearly. They're trolls, hideous creatures with the leathery skin, thick lips, fat lumpy noses, and deep-set eyes. Their ears are long and pointy, their backs hunched, their teeth crooked. Please, the father begs. Have mercy on my children, they are only children, the mother pleads. Yes, we are, Claire cries out in response to the captain's declaration that they are not God's children. The soldiers roar in disgust as their captain shouts, No, you are not. You are abominations. Monsters. As the army cheers for their captain, the troll family trembles and sobs, holding each other tight. You die on this day, the captain shouts, standing tall and mighty like a triumphant hero of olden legends. Back at the abandoned village, now reduced to ashes, As we pan closer to a pile of ashes, we see a small sprout of vegetation, a sign of new life emerging from the destruction. Claire's final thoughts echo as the scene fades. But I don't think people who exist in the future should have to pay for the sins of their parents. I think we should all, always, get to start over, anew. Tales of the Incandescent, Blackpoints 7. The bright light that had engulfed them faded, revealing a new scene. X and Y found themselves sitting side by side on a bench in a dog park, somewhere in America, in the year 2001. The light bulb sat beside them, all three looking strangely out of place in their surroundings. It was a bright sunny day, and the park was alive with activity. Normal-looking people went about their business, picnicking, playing with their dogs, cooking on grills, and running around, enjoying the pleasant weather. X turned to Y, her voice tinged with curiosity. I would like to ask you something about all of these worlds that we have been visiting and stories that we have been witnessing. Yes? Y prompted. They all exist within the same universe? X asked, her brow furrowed in thought. Y considered for a moment before answering. Some, not all of them. They're all from the multiverse of infinite information. X's gaze drifted across the park, studying the various groups of parkgoers. And where are we right now? A dog park, Y replied matter-of-factly. X shook her head, clarifying her question. No, what I mean by that is, what are we in terms of reality? Or in other words, as I've been asking, how did we get here? Y stretched his arms and legs, scrunching up his face as if trying hard to formulate a response. Think of it like this, okay? Imagine a movie theater crossed with the Great Library of Alexandria. He paused dramatically, throwing his arms up in the air. And then imagine you burnt it all up. X scooted away from him a little, visibly uncomfortable with his theatrics. Undeterred, Y continued. And now imagine for me, if you will, all of that smoke that rises into the atmosphere? Well, that's us. He paused, reconsidering. No, wait, scratch that. We're the audience. Yeah, that's who we are. We're the audience in a grand movie theater. Or a library. By this point, Y was standing on one foot on the bench, shouting in an exaggerated theatrical manner. Okay, sit down, X said, exasperation evident in her voice. Y stopped his performance and sat down with a silly chuckle at himself. X sighed. How about we just move along to the next illumination then, shall we? Seeing as how you are still so very unable to properly and respectfully answer my questions. Y, already holding the wire in his hands, grinned. I am. X rolled her eyes as Y gave a tug at the wire. The camera zoomed in on a pile of dog excrement as the plug popped out with a squelch. Now that is just absolutely juvenile, X exclaimed, thoroughly disgusted. Y snickered like an obnoxious child, the wire still in his hands as the bright light began to fade the scene out once more. All through the North Pole, Illumination Number 7. The harsh Arctic wind howled across the barren landscape as a military envoy vehicle trudged through the thick blanket of snow. Inside the cramped confines of the army platoon truck, 5 soldiers huddled together, their bodies jostling with each bump and dip in the treacherous terrain. The group consisted of Gus, Hansen, Arnold, Reagan, and the newest addition to their ranks, Quimbe. Quimbe, a southerner unaccustomed to the biting cold, couldn't contain his frustration any longer. Fucking bullshit getting sent up here, he grumbled, his breath visible in the frigid air. I'm from the south, homie. I was expecting to get sent to like Iraq or somewhere warm, not fucking Santa's workshop to sit and freeze my nuts off in the snow. Arnold, clearly annoyed by Quimbe's constant complaining, retorted sarcastically, You bitch so much to keep warm, don't you? Undeterred, Quimbe pressed on, Yes, I do as a matter of fact. The fuck we doing up here? Hansen, attempting to offer some clarity to the situation, explained, They said we're on our way to some environmentalist research base to take up guard positions. Quimbe's frustration only grew at this revelation. Environmentalist bullshit stuck my ass in the snow? Fuck, man. The fuck they need guards for anyway? Nah, sounds like there's some shady Russian shit going on with this shit, man. The tension in the truck was suddenly broken by Gus's laughter. With a mischievous glint in his eye, he asked, "You know what we're really doing up here, right?" The other soldiers, save for Quimbe, erupted into laughter, clearly in on some inside joke. Confused and slightly irritated, Quimbe questioned, "What?" Arnold, still chuckling, warned, "Gus always makes up bullshit conspiracy stories to scare newbies like you. He did this last time we were deployed together. Don't listen to him." Gus, undeterred by Arnold's warning, leaned in conspiratorially. "I didn't bring it up 'cause of the noob," he insisted. "I brought it up 'cause it's a legit thing up here. I heard all about it." He began to twirl his finger dramatically, gesturing first to the ceiling of the truck and then to the floor. "Right under this whole part of the planet, there's supposedly an alien city, all through the ground underneath the ice of the North Pole. Some people say that it stretches all the way around the world with vast, huge tunnels and shit." Quimbe couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of Gus's claim. "So you're telling me that we're going up here to fight some kind of alien scourge or something? Or find an entrance to an alien city?" Ha ha! Gus, clearly enjoying the reaction he was getting, continued to spin his tail. Maybe we're going to guard the scientists who are working up there dissecting the aliens. The environmentalist thing is just a cover-up." The other soldiers, caught up in the moment, began to chime in with their own outlandish theories. "Maybe there's a secret underground war going on," Arnold suggested with a grin. Reagan, not to be outdone, added, "I heard that Hitler escaped in a U-boat to the North Pole at the end of World War II, and he's down there to this day working with an alien shadow cult that controls the world government and shit." Hansen laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha. Yeah, and Elvis is down there with him." "And Kurt Cobain," Reagan chimed in. The soldiers continued to one-up each other with increasingly ridiculous additions to their conspiracy theory. "Freakin' the pilot chick, Amelia Earhart," Gus offered. "Nelson Mandela," Arnold added. Reagan, caught up in the absurdity, exclaimed, Yeah. Haha. And that chick who goes in the elevator and never comes out in that YouTube video, that's where she went. The aliens and Hitler took her to the North Pole." Quimbe, despite his initial annoyance, found himself smiling and laughing along with his fellow soldiers. "Y'all are bullshit," he said, shaking his head in amusement. Suddenly, without warning, the truck was slammed by something from the outside, violently jostling the men inside. The laughter died instantly as the soldiers instinctively reached for their weapons, bracing themselves for whatever might come next. "What the fuck was that?" Quimbe shouted, his earlier amusement replaced by genuine fear. Before anyone could answer, the truck was hit again. And then a third time, the force of the impact tipping the vehicle onto its side and sending the men tumbling. Heart-pounding, the soldiers clambered out of the overturned truck, emerging into the harsh Arctic night. Snow whipped around them in every direction, obscuring their vision and making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Dark hills of snow loomed ominously in the distance. Without warning, a dark, shadowy figure darted by, barely visible in the swirling snow. In the chaos that followed, Hansen suddenly vanished, as if swallowed by the night itself. Another shadowy figure flashed past, prompting Arnold to fire his gun blindly into the darkness. The sound of the shots was quickly swallowed by the howling wind. "What the fuck is going on?" Quimbe screamed, his earlier bravado completely gone. Reagan, trying to maintain some semblance of control, shouted back, "Terrorist or something. Stay sharp, bro." Arnold, his voice tinged with panic, called out, "Where the fuck is Hansen?" No sooner had the words left his mouth than another dark figure swept by, this time seizing Arnold and dragging him away into the night. His terrified screams echoed briefly before being silenced by the relentless wind. "The fuck?" Quimbe cried, his eyes wide with terror. Gus, peering into the swirling snow, suddenly shouted, "I think I see 'em." Without waiting for a response, he charged off into the blizzard. The sound of gunfire erupted, then just as quickly fell silent. Now only Quimbe and Reagan remained, standing back to back with their weapons at the ready. They paced in a tight circle, eyes darting frantically in all directions. "Stay behind me," Reagan ordered, his voice tense. "Don't break this position." Quimbe nodded silently, his body shivering from both cold and fear. For a moment, all was quiet, save for the howling wind. Then, without warning, a massive, hair-covered figure leapt atop the overturned truck. It was a Bigfoot, its muscular frame silhouetted against the night sky. The creature threw back its head and roared, revealing rows of sharp, bloody teeth. "Holy shit!" Quimbe screamed, his voice cracking with terror. Both men opened fire on the beast, but it effortlessly leapt away, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as it had appeared. "Holy fucking shit," Quimbe repeated, his mind struggling to process what he had just seen. Before either soldier could react further, the Bigfoot landed directly in front of them, its massive form towering over the terrified men. It roared again, the sound reverberating through their bodies. Instinct took over, and both men turned and ran, their feet pounding against the snow-covered ground. They could hear the creature giving chase, its heavy footfalls keeping pace behind them as they fled for their lives. "Keep going," Reagan shouted, urging Quimbe on as they raced through the darkness. The men continued to run, their lungs burning from the exertion and the frigid air. Gradually, the sound of pursuit began to fade, but they pressed on, unwilling to risk slowing down. Suddenly, Quimbe's foot came down on something that crunched beneath his boot. He stumbled to a stop, lifting his foot to reveal a candy cane, its red and white stripes stark against the pristine snow. The two men exchanged bewildered looks, their minds reeling from the surreal discovery. "A candy cane?" they said in unison, their voices a mix of confusion and disbelief. Their moment of puzzlement was shattered as the Bigfoot suddenly landed before them, its massive form blocking out what little light remained. With a deafening roar, it reached out and seized Reagan in its powerful grip. Quimbe, acting on pure adrenaline, raised his weapon and fired at the beast. To his horror, the shots seemed to have no effect on the creature. With terrifying ease, the Bigfoot swung Reagan around and hurled him through the air. The soldier's screams faded as he disappeared into the darkness. "What the fuck? Fuck you!" Quimbe shouted, his voice a mix of rage and terror. He turned and ran once more, risking a glance over his shoulder to see the Bigfoot standing motionless, watching him flee. Quimbe pushed on, his legs burning with exertion. "I'm not fucking built for the snow," he gasped, his southern roots ill-suited for this Arctic nightmare. Just as he thought he might have escaped, the Bigfoot suddenly appeared before him, landing with earth-shaking force. It roared directly in Quimbe's face, the hot breath of the beast washing over him. Overwhelmed by terror, Quimbe's fingers went limp, his weapon falling uselessly into the snow. His legs gave out and he collapsed to the ground, certain that his end had come. The Bigfoot reached down and seized him in its powerful grip. The last thing Quimbe saw before losing consciousness was the dark landscape rushing by as the creature leapt away, carrying him off into the Arctic night. An indeterminate amount of time later, Quimbe's eyes fluttered open. He found himself in a room with red brick walls, adorned with green garland and tinsel. Directly in front of him, through a glass window, he could see another room filled with workbenches and half-built or wrapped toys. As his senses slowly returned, Quimbe became aware of a searing pain in his head and limbs. To his horror, he realized he was nailed to a crucifix, with candy cane spikes driven through his hands and feet. A crown of thorns pierced his scalp, securing a green elf hat to his head. Christmas lights were strung around his body and the cross, transforming the grotesque scene into a macabre parody of a Christmas tree. Quimbe's eyes darted around the room, his mind struggling to comprehend the nightmarish situation. Hypothermia, he moaned, his thoughts scattered and confused. Suddenly, a loud whistle pierced the air. Quimbe squinted through the glass window, his vision blurry but slowly focusing. To his astonishment, he saw a large green door swing open on the other side. A line of Sasquatch, each wearing a green elf hat and green suspenders, marched into the room, growling as they took their places at the workbenches and began tinkering with the toys. "What the fuck?" Quimbe whispered, his voice barely audible. The sound of another door opening drew his attention back to his own room. A massive figure, unmistakably a Sasquatch wearing a Santa hat, stood breathing heavily in the doorway. Its shadow fell across Quimbe's face, plunging him into darkness. Quimbe's eyes widened in terror, his body trembling uncontrollably as the creature approached. The last thing he heard before losing consciousness once more was a deep, rumbling voice that chilled him to his very core. As the sound echoed through the workshop, the scene faded to black, leaving behind only questions and the haunting image of a nightmare before Christmas that Quimbe would never forget.